the early 1890s, John Kellogg established the Sanitas Food Company, which produced his new flaked cereals and meat substitutes to raise money for the Battle Creek Sanitarium. He also looked for funds to establish a mission in Chicago. At first, his project seemed hopeless. But one day, early in 1893, the brothers Henry and Francis Vessels paid a visit from South Africa.
I will come to the point, Dr. Kellogg. Our family has found diamonds on one of our farms in South Africa, and we want to use our means to help the Lord's work.
I'm glad to hear that, brother. My own view is that the only purpose of money is to help other people.
Good. What would you do with a gift of $40,000?
That's easy. A number of wealthy Chicagoans have been after me to open a branch of the sanitarium there.
What? You would open a sanitarium for the rich?
Only so the prophets could support a social and evangelistic program among Chicago's heathen, in the dirtiest and wickedest slums in the city.
Ah, good. Francis?
Yeah, Henry.
Doctor, you will have a check in a few days.
The Chicago Branch Sanitarium opened in time for the 1893 Chicago World's Fair. 2 months later, the new Medical Missionary and Benevolent Association began operating the Chicago Medical Mission. The MMBA, established at John Kellogg's urging, brought the denomination's medical work under his personal control. This situation was to cause much difficulty in later years. In 1897, John began to publicly teach his pantheistic ideas, the very concepts Ellen White had warned him against. At a ministerial institute just before the General Conference session in Lincoln, Nebraska, he gave a series of talks on the subject.
We have a universal presence, by the aid of which every atom in the universe is kept in touch with every other atom. This force can be nothing else than God. What an amazing thought that this almighty God should make himself a servant of man by giving man power to direct the energy within his body. Amen.
No one seemed to understand that these exciting new ideas contradicted Bible teaching. Other concerns took prominence. In 1897, the sanitarium's 30-year charter expired. By law, the institution must go up for auction, which meant it could be bought by non-Adventists. John discussed the situation with the board of directors, which included his close friends, Dr. George Thomason and Dr. David Paulson.
The legislature refused to extend the charter, but it did appoint me receiver until we can organize a new association.
Then we'd better get busy and prepare the articles of association for our new organization.
Oh, don't worry, Dr. Paulson. I'll write them myself. This meeting is adjourned. We'll reconvene when the articles of association are ready.
Ladies and gentlemen, you have copies of the Articles of Association for our new organization, the Michigan Sanitarium and Benevolent Association. The old stockholders are allowed to name one association member for each share of stock. Thus, we have several hundred members present today, including a number of ministers.
Whom we welcome cordially.
Of course, Dr. Thomason.
Now, I have included a declaration of principles, which each member of the association must sign. Please do so now.
Excuse me, Dr. Kellogg.
Yes, Brother Kilgore?
What about this statement that the sanitarium will be undenominational and unsectarian? What does that mean?
I must admit that concerns me too, Doctor.
Don't worry about that. It just means the sanitarium must be for all who are sick. It can't discriminate against anyone because of his beliefs.
Oh. Well, as long as that's the meaning, I have no problem with it. I'll gladly sign.
So will I.
Well, Dr. Kellogg, now that we're organized, we can concentrate on purchasing the sanitarium for the amount of its debts. Are you confident we can succeed?
We have to, Dr. Paulson. I've been working for years to keep the institution under our control. I've planned carefully. Why, as much as 10 years ago, I persuaded the stockholders to go on record opposing a division of the assets when the institution is sold at the expiration of the charter.
But it looks as though some of the stockholders are still hoping to make some money. And they will, if the sanitarium is sold when it goes up for auction next year.
Why should they capitalize on my work? It's because of me that the sanitarium has increased in worth. Besides, this is supposed to be a non-profit institution.
And if it's sold to a non-Adventist group, all our philanthropic work will come to an abrupt end.
We can't let it be sold. I'll find some way.
I've called you all here, doctors and staff alike, because I need your help to save the sanitarium.
What can we do, Doctor?
Just this, Dr. Geisel. I want each of you to prepare a bill for the difference between the wages you receive now and what you would expect to receive if the hospital were bought by a non-Adventist group. Some of the staff receive 7 cents an hour. Would you accept that if you weren't working for the church? No. Then put it in writing.
And when I showed those bills to a couple of people I knew were interested in the bidding, they were shocked. We were the only bidder at the auction. We have our new charter. The sanitarium still belongs to us.
Amen.
It wasn't long before John broadened his definition of undenominational in a way that frightened the church's leaders. About the time Teddy Roosevelt and his Rough Riders were charging up San Juan Hill, a different battle was taking place among the sanitarium directors.
Dr. Kellogg, some of us are disturbed about your latest statements regarding the undenominational character of the sanitarium.
What statements are those, Elder Irwin?
Well, you now say that as an undenominational institution, the sanitarium cannot be used to present any peculiarly Seventh-day Adventist doctrine.
That's correct.
But that's contrary to the spirit of prophecy, Council.
I agree with Elder Bordeaux. Sister White has clearly said, God's purpose is for us to have a health institution organized and controlled exclusively by Seventh-day Adventists.
Elder Cordless is right. It appears to me that the words undenominational and unsectarian were put into the charter as part of a scheme to separate the sanitarium from the denominational control.
That's absolutely untrue. The sanitarium is owned and controlled by those who have owned it during all the years since its organization. There's been no change in ownership, no change in principles, no change in management, and no change has been contemplated.
In spite of this heated denial, John made a statement to a reporter a few years later that reinforced the suspicions of church leaders.
And what do you plan for the future of the Adventist sanitarium, Dr. Kellogg?
Now, wait a minute there, young man. This is not an Adventist sanitarium. It has no connection with the Seventh-day Adventist denomination as such.
But it's governed by Adventists, isn't it?
Not necessarily. Membership in the association governing it is as open to a Catholic as to a Seventh-day Adventist.
Since 1898, Ellen White's counsel to John had become more pointed and forceful. She warned him against concentrating power in his own hands and against belittling the gospel ministry. Now she wrote to him giving her opinion of his statements on the undenominational character of the medical work.
If the institutions are to be conducted on the undenominational plan, what have Seventh-day Adventists to do with this work? You have committed yourself as working undenominationally in a work which has taken money from people who are decidedly a denominational people.
For years, John had admitted his own spiritual weakness and had thanked Sister White for her concern and counsel. But as his power grew and her counsels conflicted more and more with his wishes, his attitude changed. As early as 1899, he began to complain.
Well, John, do you still plan to resign your denominational offices over Sister White's last letter?
It would serve them right if I did. But I don't see how the sanitarium can run smoothly without me.
I see.
She reproves me for things that just aren't true. She wouldn't do that if somebody weren't telling her false tales about me.
Who would do that?
Willie White. Who else? He's right there in Australia with his mother. How can I defend myself at this distance? If Sister White knew the truth, she would never send me such critical counsel.
Some of the church leaders say you're the one trying to influence Sister White against them.
Of course. If they had their way, they'd send me to Devil's Island like the French did to Captain Dreyfus, and I'm as innocent as he is.
The French army isn't led by God. Sister White is.
I can't help thinking that if Sister White were really led by God, she wouldn't act on this misinformation. Remember when she said she had a vision about a huge building for the medical mission in Chicago?
Yes.
She wrote that we shouldn't spend funds on such large buildings, and there was no such building.
True, but the plans for the building had been drawn and approved by the board.
Oh, don't bother me with unimportant details, Will.
By 1901, more Adventists worked under John Kellogg's supervision than under the direction of the General Conference. As his influence grew, some church leaders feared the doctor was trying to gain control of the entire denomination. As John Kellogg's influence grew, his pantheistic ideas spread. In 1899, Ella J. Wagoner, a physician and minister, had presented the subject at the General Conference session held in South Lancaster, Massachusetts.
How many lives are there in the universe? There is but one life, and that is the life of God. And how long is the life of God to endure? Through eternity!
Do you ever expect to be sick, Elder?
No! I expect to live forever!
When the General Conference was reorganized in 1901, John was at the height of his influence in the church. With the help of G.A. Irwin, General Conference president, he was able to arrange for increased representation for the medical arm of the work. There was more to come.
To sum up, instead of a General Conference president, we will have a 25-man executive committee with Elder Arthur G. Daniels as chairman. The other members of the committee are myself, G.A. Irwin, Elder Hampton W. Cottrell, Elder Frederick Griggs, Elder S.N. Haskell, Elder Alonzo T. Jones, Dr. John H. Kellogg, Elder Robert M. Kilgore, Elder... Well, Dr. Kellogg, you can't say the church doesn't appreciate your talents. You've played a major part in reorganizing the administration, and you're on a number of boards, committees, and corporations. You and Dr. Paulson were even invited to receive ministerial credentials. Too bad you turned it down.
Elder Irwin, I'm sure these additional duties will be enough to keep me busy in the 2 years until the next General Conference session.
I'm glad Elder Daniels returned from Australia in time to serve. The two of you will be working together on more than one committee. It shows that the medical work and the ministry can work in harmony.
On September 6, 1901, at the Pan American Exposition, a Michigan-born anarchist stood in line with thousands of other people who were waiting to shake hands with President William McKinley. The president, a gentle man, certainly had no reason to suspect violence on this day of celebration.
Good afternoon, madam. How kind of you to come.
I'm delighted to meet you, Mr. President. My husband voted for you last November.
Please give my thanks to your husband, dear lady. Good afternoon, sir. I'm so glad that you...
Oh!
He's shot! Nobody get away!
Hold on, Mr. President. Help is coming. I'm sorry I didn't catch that, Mr. President. What'd you say about the gunman?
Don't let them hurt him.
Have you heard the news about President McKinley? He died at 2:15 this morning.
Yes, Ella, I heard. That's why I came home early.
Oh, it's hard to believe. It's been 8 days since he was shot. The doctors were sure he would recover.
Oh, it's their fault. They had one of those new X-ray machines right there at the exposition. If they'd only used it, they could have found the bullet and removed it. We must always use the most up-to-date equipment available. Always.
A more personal disaster was soon to befall. On February 18, 1902, John and a secretary were on their way back to Battle Creek from the West Coast. As the two men changed trains in Chicago, a reporter approached Dr. Kellogg, who was easily identified by his white suit.
Dr. Kellogg! Dr. Kellogg!
Yes, what is it, young man? I have a train to catch.
I just wanted to know if you plan to rebuild the Battle Creek Sanitarium, Doctor.
Rebuild? What do you mean? We have a fine facility.
You haven't heard? The sanitarium burned to the ground this morning.
There's no question of relocating the sanitarium. The Battle Creek Sanitarium must be in Battle Creek.
But Sister White has repeatedly counseled that we shouldn't concentrate our members and institutions in one place.
Elder Daniels is right. Sister White has specifically said she wished the sanitarium were not in Battle Creek at all. Isn't that right, Brother Cottrell?
It is, Brother Prescott. What's more, many cities have offered land and money if we'll relocate. There are Niles and Benton Harbor here in Michigan, Atlantic City, New Jersey, and several in California.
On the other hand, brethren, we still own the property here. If we move, we'll have to sell it at a loss. The people of Battle Creek want us to stay. They've pledged more than $80,000 to help us rebuild. And the city has finally recognized our nonprofit status.
That's true. Remember how shocked the officials were when they investigated after the fire and discovered what low wages the staff and doctors received?
Well, you're right, Brother Prescott. They just couldn't believe that doctors would work for $15 a week. Now they're returning $15,000 we've already paid in taxes, and we won't have to pay any more.
Whatever we do, we want to make sure we don't go into debt. When I became chairman of the General Conference Committee, I was appalled at the amount of our indebtedness. There must be no more.
Agreed, Brother Daniels. We'll build on a cash basis.
Is that possible?
Oh, certainly. In addition to the funds we've just talked about, we also have the insurance money, and I'll donate 40,000 copies of The Living Temple, the book I'm writing on physiology. Church members can sell it to raise funds for the sanitarium.
To sum up, then, we agree that this building shall not cost more than $250,000, and that when this thing is done, we are not to have a dollar added to our debt.
Agreed.
Ellen White was distressed when she heard of the decision. Although the directors proposed to erect a building smaller than the original, it was still far too big. Ellen wrote to John from California.
I was instructed to tell you that the great display you are making in Battle Creek is not after God's order. There are other parts of the Lord's vineyard in which buildings are greatly needed. Do not erect an immense institution in Battle Creek, which will make it necessary for you to draw upon our people for means.
On May 11th, 1902, John laid the cornerstone for the new sanitarium. As the building rose, costs far outran the original projections, and only a fraction of the money pledged was actually contributed. In the meantime, John and A.G. Daniels left to attend the European General Conference. It was during John's efforts to establish a sanitarium in England that the first rift occurred between him and Daniels.
And I found the perfect property, Brother Daniels. It costs a mere $30,000. As I see it, our British brethren will assume $5,000 or so of the obligation, and the General Conference the rest.
Doctor, that would be creating a debt here of $25,000.
True.
And you are aware that we've been working night and day for 2 years to roll away the reproach of debt.
I'm aware of that.
Well, Doctor, with church members working so hard to clear debts, I don't see how the General Conference can assume more debt without their approval.
You don't want to have any medical work done in England. You're blocking everything.
What? Stop! Don't shove me! Where are you pushing me? Dr. Kellogg, get away from that door and let me out of this washroom.
No. You're going to listen to me here and now, where nobody can interrupt us.
For nearly 2 hours, John harangued Daniels, but the chairman stood firm.
We are in debt, head over heels, everywhere, Doctor. I'm pledged to my committee and to our people not to go on any longer with this borrowing policy.
You oppose me? Sister White will roll you over in the dust.
I must stand firm to my pledge, and I believe my position is in harmony with Sister White's counsel.
Well, sir, I will never work with you on this cash policy. I'll see you in America. Good day.
In November 1902, a meeting was held in Battle Creek, the forerunner of today's annual council. The stormy session resulted in the General Conference Committee's approval for John's plan of selling bonds to support the sanitarium. Other recommendations did not suit him so well. In fact, they directly opposed John's habit of incurring debts and then persuading the church to pay.
We recommend that all evangelistic and missionary enterprises be conducted on a strictly cash basis. We further recommend that the General Conference or Mission Board be not held financially responsible for any obligations which they have not assumed by their own action.
Well, Dr. Paulson, it looks like Arthur Daniels has won this round.
I heard he told some of the other church leaders that you have an imperious will that needs to be broken.
Oh, yes? Well, Brother Daniels isn't a strict vegetarian.
In later years, John Kellogg would write to a friend that he had expected a break with the church since about 1890. Events were moving swiftly toward that break. Concerns arose in 1902 as soon as John Kellogg suggested selling the Living Temple to fund the rebuilding of the Battle Creek Sanitarium. A committee of 4 was appointed to investigate the manuscript and report on it at the 1902 Autumn Council. In an unusual move, the small committee produced 2 reports.
Well, Elder Spicer, I see that 3 of the committee members find the Living Temple wholly acceptable and appropriate.
But look who signed that report, Elder Daniels. Dr. Kellogg himself and 2 of his supporters, Elder A.T. Jones and Dr. David Paulson.
That's true. I confess I find myself in agreement with Elder Prescott's minority report. He says he regards the matter as leading to harm, and he hopes the book will never be published.
I read the manuscript, too, and discussed it with Dr. Kellogg. He contradicts the Bible teaching of heaven as a separate place and of God as an individual. I pray the General Conference Committee agrees with Elder Prescott's report.
The committee did reject the book, so John promptly made arrangements with the Review to publish it privately. For years, Ellen White had reproved the publishing house for such practices as underpayment of authors and personnel, harshness and greed on the part of the managers, and the printing of secular and even unsavory literature. At quitting time, on December 30th, 1902, the lead plates for John's book stood ready for the press. Most of the employees had left the building.
I smell smoke, do you?
Yes, I believe I do. Can't be. Then that watchman just made his rounds through the engine room.
It is, though. I see it over there in the corner.
The lights went out!
Fire!
Get
Turn the alarm!
Get out!
I can't
breathe! Fortunately, everyone got out safely. With the book plates destroyed, church leaders hoped John would give up his attempt to publish the Living Temple, but he sent the book to a commercial printer. He also stepped up criticism of Ellen White. These matters were not discussed at the 1903 General Conference in Oakland, California, but other topics arose which John opposed. Ellen spoke to the delegates.
There are proper ways to help the sanitarium in Battle Creek. I wish that a portion of the work of this institution had been taken elsewhere, but the sanitarium has been erected in Battle Creek and must be helped. God will institute ways and means, but he does not wish his people to invest their money in bonds, to tie up money that may be needed elsewhere.
The motion is to place all denominationally operated institutions under direct ownership of the people. Either the General Conference, Union Conference, State Conference, or organized mission field. We have had extended discussion on this matter. Is there any other comment before we vote? Dr. Kellogg?
I tell you here and now, Brother Daniels, that I do not expect to be bound by this resolution in anything I do. The thought of sanitariums being controlled by people who don't live in harmony with all the principles taught by those institutions is intolerable.
Ownership does not necessarily mean control, Dr. Kellogg.
Ownership always means control. And if you say it doesn't, you don't know what you're talking about.
Those in favor of denominational ownership?
Aye.
Aye. It is carried. Now, the next resolution calls for the General Conference headquarters and the review to be relocated. I will ask Sister White to comment.
For years the warning has been given to our people, get out of Battle Creek. Let the General Conference offices and the publishing work be moved from Battle Creek. God has a better place for it.
Sister White, the General Conference session is over, and you didn't say a word to bring Dr. Kellogg to task. In fact, you said God has given him his success at the sanitarium.
That's true.
But why?
I was instructed to try to lead people's minds away from difficulties. If I had spoken in open conference of Dr. Kellogg's dangers, some would have made unwise use of my statements. After all, our purpose is not to drive him away, but to save him.
Soon after this session, John confessed his mistakes, and he and Arthur Daniels announced that they had settled all their differences. Within a few weeks, however, the two sides were again bitterly opposed. At the Fall Council in October 1903, peace seemed once more to reign. But again, the reconciliation was only temporary. In 1904, when the Russo-Japanese War broke out, a different kind of war was being waged between the Kellogg and Daniels factions in the Adventist Church. During the Lake Union Conference session in Berrien Springs, Michigan, in May, Ellen White led the third and final attempt to resolve the situation.
My sympathy goes to Dr. Kellogg, who has loaded himself down with labors until the enemy has found him easy prey. I have lain awake night after night studying how I could help Dr. Kellogg. I have spent nearly whole nights in prayer. My brethren, the Lord calls for unity, for oneness. When the gospel ministers and the medical missionary workers are not united, there is placed on our churches the worst evil. It is time that we stood upon a united platform.
I confess I have had an attitude of fault-finding and dissension. I ask the forgiveness of any whom I have offended. Brother McGann, Brother Sutherland, Brother Kellogg.
Brother Prescott, you have shown the true Christian spirit. Some of Dr. Kellogg's supporters have also confessed and have reached out for peace and harmony. It is time for all to reach out their hands and make peace. Brother Kellogg, will you not do as much?
These confessions we've heard are a mere form intended to meet the emergency. Elder Prescott has made a public statement of failures, but I have not. I have no need to.
Ellen White reproved John for gloating and rebuked the supporters who encouraged his unyielding attitude. Toward the end of the session, John stood at the back of the room as Ellen pleaded for unity.
Dr. Kellogg, I appeal to you to submit to God. Your mother, before she died, made me promise to see her boys into the kingdom.
Look, Dr. Kellogg, your brother Will is strongly affected by Sister White's words. He's weeping. I'd better check my watch. I don't want to miss my train back to Battle Creek.
God wants us to stand together. Yield. Give him your heart now.
Doesn't her appeal touch you at all, Dr. Kellogg? I must go. Good day, Dr. Paulson.
Ellen said later that John would have been saved for the cause if only his supporters at this time had encouraged him to humble himself. John considered the Berrien Springs meeting a victory until he discovered that the opposition would no longer pay the debts of the sanitarium and the Medical, Missionary, and Benevolent Association. He retaliated by arranging for the MMBA to go into bankruptcy. Back in 1903, John's plans to revive Battle Creek College had been stopped when Ellen White testified against the idea. But in 1905, with the help of A.T. Jones, he reopened the school under his own direction.
This is more than just a college, Sister Yardley. It's a university. Your son may choose his studies from all sorts of professional, scientific, literary, biblical, and technical courses. He'll be able to meet expenses by working at the sanitarium.
It sounds very good, Dr. Kellogg, but I'm just not sure. Sister White has written so forcefully against reopening the college.
Set your mind at rest, sister. It's impossible to rely on the so-called testimonies of Sister White. Too many of them are actually written by her son Willie and other helpers, and sent out under her name.
Why, I had no idea. In that case, of course I'll send my son here.
By December of 1905, Ellen wrote sorrowfully to A.G. Daniels and W.W. Prescott,
I have lost all hope of Dr. Kellogg. He is, I believe, past the day of his reprieve. I am instructed not to write to him.
John later would confide to a friend that he had insisted on keeping the sanitarium under his own control because he had expected for years to be separated from the church. The actual break took place November 10th, 1907. M.N. Campbell, pastor of the Battle Creek Tabernacle, read the charges against the doctor. Pantheism was not mentioned.
Dr. Kellogg has not attended services for a number of years. He has failed to pay a tithe or to contribute to the expenses of the church in any way. He has demonstrated his antagonism to the gifts now manifest in the church, and he is allied with those who are attempting to overthrow the work for which this church exists.
The charitable work John loved was sharply curtailed by his separation from the church. He was often deeply in debt and embroiled in numerous lawsuits, the most acrimonious being those against his brother Will over the cereal industry. The death of this complex man on December 14, 1943, brought tributes from prominent people throughout the world. The sanitarium building was sold to the U.S. government in 1942 and became the Percy Jones Army Hospital. Although the building was gone, the Battle Creek Sanitarium Corporation was returned to the Seventh-day Adventist Church in 1957. The completion of the Transcontinental Railroad had brought people flocking to Southern California, and the fame of the state's sunshine and sea breezes resulted in the establishment of numerous sanitariums. By the late 1880s, however, the flow of immigrants had dried up, and many of these institutions were for sale at less than cost. Ellen White was shown that the time had come to establish SDA sanitariums in the area. In 1901, she mentioned her interest to Dr. T.S. Whitelock, who was operating a treatment room in San Diego, and he eventually informed her of a possible site.
Sarah, I've just received a letter from Dr. Whitelock telling me about a former sanitarium for sale in National City, down in Paradise Valley near San Diego.
Oh, Mother, that's good news. What does he say about it?
Well, it seems it has a large building on 20 acres. The property includes citrus groves, vineyards, and gardens, and even shade trees.
Oh, it sounds wonderful. Are you going to visit it?
Well, we'll be attending the camp meeting in Los Angeles in October. Why don't we plan to go see the property from there?
This place is really dirty, Mother. Watch your dress.
Oh, a little dust won't hurt me, Willie. Dr. Whitelock, if this place were fixed up, it would look just like what was shown me of the Lord.
And the price has been lowered from $20,000 to $12,000. Unfortunately, the reason the owners are so eager to sell is that there's no water. The unprecedented drought of the last few years is turning the whole valley into a desert.
This is the property we are to purchase. Let's inform the Southern California Conference.
But the conference officials were unwilling to invest money in a place without water. Meanwhile, as the drought continued, the price dropped repeatedly. When Ellen heard that the owner's agent would consider an offer of $6,000, she consulted with her close friend, Josephine Gotzian, who had helped finance the St. Helena Sanitarium.
Josephine, I'm completely convinced this is the property the Lord wants us to have.
Well, in that case, Ellen, I think we should definitely make an offer. I suggest $4,000. I'll donate $2,000 of it myself.
And I'll borrow the other $2,000. We can't delay while we wait for the brethren in responsibility, who should have been quick to discern the advantages of this place as a center for the medical missionary work.
You and I will unite in helping to purchase the Potts Sanitarium. Here's my hand on it.
Thank you. I'll telegraph our offer to Mr. Harrison in New York immediately.
Mother, here's a telegram from New York. Perhaps it's the answer from Mr. Harrison you were looking for.
Thank you, Sarah. It is. He's accepted the offer. The property is ours.
Later, it was learned that an offer of $6,000 for the property had reached Mr. Harrison's office by letter just a few hours after he had accepted Ellen's offer. Mr. and Mrs. E.R. Palmer, whom Ellen had known in Australia, arrived to take charge of the sanitarium on April 18, 1904, the day Ellen left for an extended trip to Washington, D.C. Ellen kept in touch with the Palmers by letter and knew how they had suffered through the summer from the drought, which had now lasted for 8 or 9 years. Back in California in the fall of 1904, she suggested that Adventist well digger Salem Hamilton be brought out from Nebraska. With a water wizard stick, he located a spot and began to dig. Ellen visited the property on November 7th.
Oh, Sister White, I'm glad you were able to come today.
Well, I had to check the progress on the well, Brother Palmer.
There isn't much, I'm afraid. Brother Hamilton and his helpers are down to 80 feet, and they've found nothing but dust.
Well, I'll stay a few days and see what happens.
Still nothing. It looks hopeless to me.
Well, what are you going to do, Brother Hamilton?
I have a question to ask you. Did the Lord tell you to buy this property?
Yes. Yes. 3 times I was shown that we should secure this particular property.
All right, I have my answer. The Lord would not give us an elephant without providing water for it to drink. We'll go on digging. Mr. Palmer, would you be afraid to come down? I think there's water not far away.
I'll be right there, Brother Hamilton.
There. Do you hear that? Like the tinkle of a bell or the sound of a small waterfall in the depths of the forest.
We've been tunneling in this direction here, but it's done no good. I'm going to try the other direction. You fellas all move back as far as you can so I don't hit you with the pick. All right.
You did it! You broke through!
That water's coming fast. Hey, let's get out of here. Leave the tools. Go! Go!
By the next morning, there was 15 feet of water in the well. The first patient arrived unannounced on November 23rd. By March 16th, 1905, Ellen White noted that there were 20 patients, and the staff was so busy there had been no time for a formal opening. In the meantime, in response to Ellen's call for a sanitarium near Los Angeles, Elder J.A. Burden had begun to look for a suitable property. Sometime in 1904, in the village of Glendale, 8 miles from L.A., he found the 75-room Glendale Hotel that had cost $60,000 to build in 1886. Although the asking price was only $26,000, Burden knew that was out of reach. Deciding that a reduction to $15,000 would indicate God's approval, he took several brethren with him to call on the agent, Mr. Leslie C. Brand.
So you see, Mr. Brand, our money'll have to come from church members. Can you help us by reducing the price?
Well, how does $12,500 sound?
Why, it sounds fine. Here's a $20 bill. Will you accept this as a deposit on the purchase?
That will do for now, Elder Burden, but I will need $1,000 down payment soon. And good luck in raising the rest of the money.
Elder Santee, I've gone as far as I can on my own. The conference administrators have refused to act. When the constituency here at the camp meeting rejected the purchase, well, I almost gave up. But if you, as conference president, back me, perhaps we can make some headway.
Well, now, to be perfectly fair, Elder Burden, we must recognize that the churches here have small memberships, and the conference is heavily in debt. While we don't even have the $1,000 for your down payment.
I do understand that, but this work must go forward. Sister White has been very definite in her statements to that effect. Why, I'm willing to advance part of the down payment myself, but I just can't do more.
You convinced me, Elder Burden. I'll advance the rest of the money for the down payment. Then we'll see what the delegates in session can be persuaded to do.
Just then, a message came from Ellen White urging the purchase of the property. Elder Santee read the message to the conference delegates in session. 2 church members agreed to advance $1,000 each toward the purchase price, and the delegates rallied. Soon, $5,200 had been pledged. A cash payment of $4,500 was made, and a 3-year mortgage was signed. In November 1904, Ellen traveled from the Paradise Valley Sanitarium to Glendale to look over the property.
We're already in operation, Sister White. Our first patients arrived on the 18th of this month, though, as you can see, we aren't ready yet to open officially.
Yes, I notice the men are still painting. What of the medical staff?
Oh, they're excellent. Dr. Abby Simpson is the medical supervisor, and she's assisted by Leonora Lacey as head nurse.
Oh, I am very pleased, Brother Burden. I wish there were more land than just 5 acres, but it is definitely in the country, since there are no buildings nearby.
Yes, and we're surrounded by strawberry fields and orange groves.
A school of nursing was established at the Glendale Sanitarium in 1905, and the first, consisting of 2 students, graduated in 1906. Harmon Lindsay helped the school to obtain accreditation in 1911. In 1923, the old facility was sold, and the institution was moved to a 30-acre plot out of town, in the valley between the Sierra Madre Mountains and the lovely San Rafael foothills. It is a reminder that when the church heeded the advice of the Lord's spokeswoman, the work went forward. Early in 1905, Ellen White told J.A. Burton, head of the St. Helena Sanitarium, to look for property in the area of San Bernardino, Riverside, and Redlands. 4 miles from Redlands, he found a 76-acre resort, first called Mound City and then Loma Linda, Spanish for Beautiful Hill. A group of doctors planning a health resort had spent $155,000 on buildings and improvements. But this project, too, had failed. Now, only a caretaker and a few sheep lived at what nearby residents called Lonesome Linda. Ellen White was sure this was the site that had been presented to her several years earlier. The price dropped rapidly from $110,000 to $40,000. And when Elder Burden described the buildings, orchards, livestock, and supplies, she urged him to take immediate action to secure it. But where to find the money? The debt-ridden conference refused financial responsibility, and a binder of $1,000 was due by May 26th. On May 25th, Elder Burden and his close friend, Elder R.S. Owen, took the electric car down the coast to visit a farmer thought to have money. But he wasn't home.
I'm getting discouraged, Brother Owen. The neighbor said he was somewhere around the ranch, but we've searched every foot and haven't seen hide and a hair of him.
Let's go back to the interurban stop, Brother Burden. It'll be dark soon. We have 1.5 miles to walk. Maybe we were wrong. God doesn't want us to have this property after all.
Hey! The car passed us right by. It didn't even slow down.
I guess we were supposed to signal it. We have a 2-hour wait for the next one.
You know, that'd be enough time to walk back to the cabin for one more look-see.
Oh, in the dark? Well, all right. Let us not be weary in well-doing. Maybe we'll find him home this time.
Praise the Lord. A few days ago I couldn't have helped you. But just recently I closed a deal on a piece of land I've had for sale for months. I'll be more than happy to lend you the money you need. The full 2,400 if necessary.
You'll not regret your generosity, brother. I'll give you my personal note for the money.
2 weeks later, on June 12, 1905, as Elder and Mrs. Burden were inspecting the property with other workers, the express wagon from Redlands drove up.
Look, John, isn't that Sister White on the express wagon?
Whoa there! Why, yes it is, Eleanor. And Willie and his wife are with her. Let's go meet them.
Here, Mother. Take my hand and I'll help you down from the wagon. Mother, why are you looking at that hotel so intently?
Willie, I've been here before.
No, Mother, you've never been here.
Then this is the very place the Lord has shown me, for it's all familiar. Oh, here come Brother and Sister Burden.
Hello, Sister White. Willie!
Hello, Brother and Sister.
Well, if you'll all come with me, I'll show you through the recreation building.
Well, thank you, Brother Burden.
It certainly sounds desolate right now, with the wind blowing through the building like that.
Oh, this building will be of great value to us. A school will be established here. Battle Creek is going down. God will reestablish his medical work at this place.
But the remaining $4,000 of the down payment had yet to be found. Bell Baker provided $1,000. Owen took out an unsecured loan, and Elder Burden used another $1,000 from the affluent farmer's loan. Still, the conference hesitated. On June 20th, Elder G.A. Irwin, newly elected president of the General Conference, spoke at a constituency meeting of the Southern California Conference.
And remember how, in Australia, when leaders of the work there could see only failure, Sister White urged that the property be purchased for Avondale School? And now that college is one of the most successful training schools in the denomination, and it is free of debt. Now we in Southern California are faced with the same decision. Although the conference is heavily in debt, I believe it to be the glory of God that this conference should assume this responsibility. Brother Santee, will you take a vote now?
Brothers and sisters, what is your will on this matter? Shall we secure the Loma Linda property and open a sanitarium there?
Aye!
Opposed? The vote is unanimous.
The daughter of General Otis, founder of the Los Angeles Times, was a recent convert, and when she rose to her feet and pledged $10,000 for the project, the financial ball began rolling. On October 12, 1905, the first 2 patients registered at the Loma Linda Sanitarium. By late November, 35 workers were in place, including Dr. G.K. Abbott, John A. Burden as chief administrator, Eleanor Burden as matron, and Dr. Julia White, superintendent of nursing.
Brother Burden, I'm pleased that nurses will be trained at our school in Loma Linda, but let's not stop there. Let us also educate physicians.
I fully agree with you, Sister White, and I'll bring up the matter at the council meeting in April. It'll be a good time to reach all ears because the meeting will include committee members from the Pacific Union Conference and Southern California Conference.
It has been moved and seconded that we name the school the Loma Linda College of Evangelists. What's your pleasure?
Aye.
Any nays? It is carried. Let me remind you all that Professor W.E. Howell has been named president of the college, and classes will start September 20th in this year of our Lord, 1906. Brethren and sisters, Meet me here on April 15 when Sister White will deliver the dedicatory address for our new medical school.
But more important than magnificent scenery and beautiful buildings and spacious grounds is the close proximity of this institution to a densely populated district, and the opportunity thus afforded of communicating to many, many people a knowledge of the third angel's message. Amen. Never are we to lose sight of the great object for which our sanitariums are established, the advancement of God's closing work in the earth.
More workers came. In 1907, Luther Warren, one of the founders of the youth work, began teaching Bible classes at Loma Linda. That same year saw the graduation of the first nursing class, 5 women and 2 men. But by 1909, when the college president, Dr. George Abbott, and his wife, Dr. Cora Richards, were helping to build up the institution, the medical school was still on the drawing board.
You wanted to speak with me, Dr. Abbott?
Yes, Professor Warren. Since you're about to leave to conduct some youth rallies in the Midwest, I wondered if you could do something for our college at the same time.
I'll be glad to do anything I can.
Well then, would you talk to some of the young people to see how many would be interested in coming to Loma Linda to study medical evangelism? We'd like to know how much interest there is.
I'll be glad to.
Good.
Dear Belle, this has been a successful endeavor. More than 150 young people have come forward to be buried with Christ in baptism. Also, I have found a number of young men and women who are willing to take the medical evangelism course at Loma Linda. I am happy to see so much enthusiasm. Good day, sir. Are you the station manager?
Yes, I am. What can I do for you?
My name is Luther Warren, and I want to charter a railroad coach to California. I have 46 Christian young people who want to go to school out there.
Well, by all means, sit down, Mr. Warren, and let's find the best way to get those folks to California.
How much farther is it to Loma Linda, Professor Warren? I can hardly wait to begin my training.
Oh, just a few more hours now, sister.
Will some of the faculty be there to meet us? Will they bring a wagon? I declare, after sitting for so many days, I wouldn't mind walking up the hill, but I don't want to carry my luggage. Professor Warren, what's the matter?
I just thought of something. I'd better go find a telegrapher.
As yet, however, no definite plans have been made for opening a school for medical evangelism. Read back that last part, please. I think I can rephrase that. Let's see.
Dr. Abbott, we just got a telegram from Professor Warren.
He has a carload of medical students, and they're headed this way.
What are we going to do, Dr. Abbott? We're completely unprepared. We have no medical school.
Well, then, Dr. White, I suppose we'd better get one. The College of Medical Evangelists, or CME, opened in Loma Linda on December 9th, 1909. In 1918, White Memorial Hospital in Los Angeles was opened, and it remained affiliated with the college until 1964, when the hospital was taken over by the Southern California Conference. The coveted A rating was received by CME in 1922, thanks largely to the efforts of Percy T. McGann. The first Doctor of Dentistry degree was granted in 1958. In 1962, the school was reorganized as Loma Linda University, the denomination's largest and most complex institution.